I thought one of your pros would be the money is almost infinite. But
No, that's one of the tragic things. What people have expectations about how much they'll earn playing poker, which...
welcome, Poker Life. Next question, Crispin. What are the pros and cons of being a professional poker player?
That's the question that everybody wants the answers to. And of course, it's not all honey and cream, but there are many good reasons to go down that path. So pro number one, flexibility. In a normal 9-to-5 job, you're dealing with bosses, you're dealing with stakeholders, other constituents, other clients. You need to organize your leave. You have very regimented hours. And if something comes up, there might be a family emergency or a great opportunity somewhere else in the world, you may just have to pass it up because you've got other commitments, other obligations. Whereas if you're a professional poker player and you organize your life properly, one of the best advantages is the flexibility to actually say yes to things from time to time. This will still hurt your social hours, and that's one of the drawbacks, is it's not a social activity. Some of the best times to play poker are going to be times when your friends are partying, when you've got evenings and weekends where people are out drinking, having a good time, and you're stuck there at the poker table trying to grind out a living. That's one of the negatives. You are going to be socially more isolated than if you are at a career. One of the kind of unsung things about normal working life is there is a work-life balance. You go to work, you're with a whole range of different people from different walks of life, different experiences, and then you come home and you're in a different life. And that actually has a lot to be said for it. There's sort of a ritualistic, communal way of being in the world. Whereas when you're playing poker, you carry that with you wherever you go. There's never really a time where I clock off being a poker player, for example. Often I have this sense of guilt with me when I'm not playing poker or doing something poker related, studying, reviewing, whatever, because like any, let's say, business owner, there's always something else you could be doing in that poker space. So you do have to have that self-reliance, but you can also have the flexibility. Second pro of being a professional poker player is travel. The vast majority of professional poker players do need to travel. They go for tournament series or big cash game events. They will travel all around the world and get to places they wouldn't normally dream of going as a holiday destination. And if you're like me, some of the best holidays you've had are where you've kind of ended up places you didn't really expect. And sometimes I'm looking at various poker things that I need to get to, short notice, somewhere random in the world that I've never been on my bucket list. But when you go out there, it opens up a whole new world of personal experience and wonder that people who are doing a normal 9-to-5 job, they'll spend the whole year planning for that 2-week trip somewhere. It's all going to be very regimented and touristy. Whereas if you're a professional poker player, that's very much part of your normal life. Living out of a suitcase, traveling from place to place, seeing new events and horizons. That's a great thing. But flip side to that, stability. There are two big sides to the stability issue. First of all, is financial stability. When you have a 9-to-5 job with your normal salary, you can plan out your spending in your investment for years to come often. You buy the house, the mortgage, you invest in the car, all of these things. Whereas if you're a professional poker player, that's very unwise to have those encumbrances and those commitments. You have such a variance in your income, and some months you'll even have negative income. It's really important to keep your costs down, not to have too many fiscal obligations that are going to hurt your bankroll during negative variance, and to make sure you have the flexibility to make rapid adjustments as circumstances vary and arise. The other side to the stability question is things like family. I mean, if you get married, have children, it's a challenge if you're a professional poker player. A normal, stable life becomes incredibly attractive when you have these things to help settle you down. There's a reason why professional poker players are predominantly younger men. They're less likely to be married, less likely to have children, less likely to have the mortgage and so on, because once they do have those things, having that routine becomes much more attractive. Also just for the children as well. Like if you have children, you want them to have routine, you want them to have stability. Having a comfortable life in one place where they can go to school, they're not moving from place to place, dad is still around all the time. All of that has an appeal, but when you're a professional poker player, that can be really difficult to maintain. Some of the best poker players that I know that are still in poker who have children either do one of two things. Either teach, they do courses online, they help others improve their game, or they're playing online exclusively. There is a positive side to that, whereas if you're playing at home online, then you are physically present. If an emergency comes up or your child needs attention or what have you, you can provide that. But on balance, it's usually better to have a normal, stable, reliable career to be a proper role model if you have a family and other obligations. Whereas if you're a professional poker player, there's a whole other series of stresses and burdens that go with that. You don't get insurance, you don't get cover for things, you need to fund everything yourself, you have to pay taxes if you're in certain jurisdictions. It becomes really difficult to manage all of those stresses. It's often much better to just be a salaried employee somewhere, particularly since many professional poker players have qualifications and abilities to do things to a very high level in other fields of endeavor. Which brings me to one of the pros, which is that if you are a professional poker player, you often are able to engage with projects of love. I found when I was working in my previous careers, it was difficult to find time for those other things, writing books or doing videos and coming up with all new things that I'd be addicted to doing, because you just don't have the energy or the flexibility to prioritize those things. Whereas if you're a professional poker player, you have that flexibility. It's unlikely that for most professional poker players that just poker is going to be enough. There often needs to be other things in their life to have a healthy, well-rounded existence, and that's certainly something that I would recommend. If you are a professional poker player, you often have those things available to you. You can organize your time so that you can write the Encyclopedia Britannica Mark II or something. Like, you have that possibility. So that's definitely a big pro, perhaps the biggest pro of being a professional poker player, is the flexibility to do other things as well as poker. And then I'll just finish on one last pro, which is you get to do something you love. I mean, most people who play poker really enjoy it. Nobody starts out as a professional poker player. They start out as a recreational player, meaning that they got into it because they enjoy it and they have a good time playing. If you can do it as a living, that's an extraordinary privilege. That is a great thing that few people will ever get to do. And so that sense of being lucky and grateful for things, to be able to even have this option in your life, for all of the stresses and burdens and downswings and other problems that arise, just to have that option is one of the great things about poker. And if you are a winning player, to know that you can play poker for a living, even if you choose not to do it, you're doing other things that are more important to you, then that awareness is good enough. Yeah.
Great. I thought one of your pros would be the money is almost infinite. but
No, that's one of the tragic things. What people have expectations about how much they'll earn playing poker, which for the vast majority, as is the case in almost every field, unrealistic. If you were to become a fiction writer, people don't look at the many multitudes of millions of people that are scraping by on less than minimum wage. They look at the Stephen Kings of the world, the J.K. Rowlings, and they're like, oh, well, one day I'm going to be this multi-billionaire with a huge franchise. People who play poker will look at the
WSOPs.
Exactly. The main event champions, the Justin Bonomo's, the Daniel Negreanu's, all of these people, and be like, wow, they're just rolling in cash. They can buy anything. But for the vast majority of poker players, myself included, it's a much more middle-class style income. And it requires very long hours and lots of effort to maintain. And the games are getting harder all the time. So you have to keep up with that. It's a real challenge. It's not something that's easy, and it's not something that's for everybody. But the fact that you can earn a comparable amount playing poker as you could in another career is good, and that is possible to do. It just requires a lot of work.
Great. So if you have any other pros and cons, if you play poker professionally or recreationally, leave them down below. Love to hear from you. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We're trying to grow the channel, but otherwise, stay safe and
Ciao for now.